Hello everyone, welcome to our channel. Today we bring you a story full of drama, tension, and emotion. This story revolves around the mother of CEO Toan during his trial, who had hidden the truth about her son's disappearance for a long time. Although her actions were driven by love and the desire to protect her son, as she didn't want Toan to fall in love with Diem, a woman from a rural background whom she believed wasn't worthy of him. Her decision led to serious consequences. Toan went missing, and she chose to remain silent to protect her family. In this trial, we will witness a mother confronting her mistakes, acknowledging the wrong decision she made. Can she redeem herself and uncover the truth behind Toan's disappearance? And where is Toan? This story will keep you on the edge of your seat. Will Diem find Toan? Join us on this thrilling journey, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the exciting developments in this story. The truth will gradually be revealed, and you'll be the first to witness it. The courtroom was packed today, the atmosphere heavy and tense. Murmurs filled the air as Toan's mother entered, escorted by a police officer. All eyes were on her, and although she tried to maintain her composure, the tremble in her body was unmistakable. Once a symbol of power and confidence in the business world, she now looked like a lost mother stripped of any authority. Toan's mother wore a simple outfit, her face no longer bearing the pride it once had, but instead showing a sorrowful, anxious expression. Her gray hair was neatly tied back, and her eyes, clouded with worry, seemed on the verge of tears. She sat down in the defendant's chair, gripping the edge of the table with one hand, her other hand hanging limply at her side, as though she couldn't fight off the overwhelming tension. The courtroom fell silent, except for the rustling of papers and the blinding overhead lights that made the room feel even darker. All eyes were on her, and a part of her felt as if she were surrounded. She couldn't bring herself to look at anyone, keeping her head down, trying to regain some semblance of calm. The judge stood, his gaze stern and his voice clear. "The trial begins. Please stand." Toan's mother stood up, her face hardening as she faced the judge. Her voice faltered. I respectfully greet the court." The judge ignored the formalities and glanced at the file in front of him before continuing. "You, as the mother of CEO Toan, are accused of concealing the truth about your son's disappearance. We ask that you provide your testimony about what happened." The prosecutor across from her stood up, his eyes fixed on her with a harsh, unyielding look. "Ma'am, we've received information about Toan's disappearance, and you didn't cooperate with the police. You hid crucial information, complicating everything further. We demand that you explain why you withheld the details you knew." Toan's mother clenched her fists tighter, each question from the prosecutor feeling like a dagger to her heart. She swallowed hard, her voice barely audible. I can't say everything. I didn't want to harm Toan." The prosecutor didn't stop, taking a step forward, his cold eyes locked onto hers. "Do you realize that your silence has caused serious consequences? Do you realize that your concealment of the truth made your son disappear when there were opportunities to save him?" Toan's mother took a deep breath, her eyes beginning to well up with tears. Guilt overwhelmed her. She had hidden so much, protected Toan by avoiding the truth, and now she had to pay the price. I just wanted to protect Toan," she whispered, her voice choked. "I didn't want to lose him. I was afraid of losing him, and I thought if I stayed silent, things would pass." The prosecutor shook his head, his expression unchanging. You can't stay silent forever. Your silence only made things worse. You knew what happened to Toan, but you didn't help us, didn't provide the vital information. Toan's mother choked up her gaze, dropping to the floor, unable to face the accusations. She knew she couldn't hide any longer. I just wanted to protect my son, she murmured. But I was wrong. I can't keep this silence anymore. I can't. The prosecutor paused for a moment, his eyes not showing any sympathy as he turned to the judge. We ask the court to continue the investigation and review the actions of the defendant. She obstructed the investigation, making Toan's disappearance even more mysterious. The judge looked at Toan's mother once again, his gaze unwavering. You will have the opportunity to present everything later, but I ask that you cooperate throughout the investigation. Your silence is no longer protection, it's concealment. Toan's mother sat back down, her heart a whirlwind of emotions, and she knew there was no escaping it anymore. Every question from the prosecutor was like a deep wound in her heart, but she knew she couldn't continue living in this lie. She had to face the truth, no matter how painful it was. The police chief stood nearby, jotting down notes, occasionally glancing at Toan's mother with an unsympathetic look. Everyone in the courtroom could feel the tension in the air. Toan's mother knew that she had reached a crucial turning point in her life, where every choice she made would decide not only her fate, but Toan's as well. Toan's mother sat silently in the defendant's chair, her hands clenched together so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Although she tried to stay calm, the tension was evident in every movement, every slight shake of her shoulders. The eyes of everyone in the courtroom were still fixed on her, and the air seemed to grow heavier with the questions that were about to be asked. The prosecutor stood up, his face expressionless. His cold gaze swept over everyone in the room, finally landing on Toan's mother. He picked up the file from the judge's desk and looked directly at her. You admitted knowing that Toan was involved with a man, yet you kept silent and did not share this information with the police. I want to ask you, why did you do that? Toan's mother shook her head, struggling to control her emotions. I didn't want Toan to be involved. I was afraid if the truth came out, my son would be hurt. She sighed, her voice weak. I didn't want to lose him, and I thought if I kept this secret, everything would be okay. The prosecutor showed no sympathy. But don't you think your silence made things worse? Toan's disappearance has lasted so long, and you're the only one who knows the crucial information to help us uncover the truth. Toan's mother looked down, her eyes misting over with unshed tears. I know I was wrong, but I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know how to protect him. I love Toan. I was afraid of losing him. The prosecutor continued, refusing to let her off easily. Then why didn't you inform us about Toan's meetings with that man? Why didn't you say from the beginning that this person could be connected to your son's disappearance? Toan's mother raised her head, her eyes meeting the prosecutor's, but it seemed she no longer had the strength to face the truth. I didn't know that man was connected to Toan's disappearance. I only knew he was someone Toan met through work. I didn't think he could harm my son. I thought he was just a friend. The prosecutor frowned, not letting the crucial details slide. But you knew about this man's complicated relationships. You saw how Toan changed after meeting him. Don't you think that keeping silent and not cooperating with the police only made things more complicated? Toan's mother remained silent, unable to answer right away. Guilt crashed over her like a wave. She had hidden too much, and now the truth was slowly coming to light. I just wanted to protect Toan. I didn't know what else to do. She choked out her shoulders, trembling slightly. But I was wrong. I shouldn't have stayed silent. The prosecutor didn't relent. He flipped through the file in his hands, quickly turning a few pages and holding up a photo in front of Toan's mother. "Do you recognize this person?" he asked, his tone cold. Toan's mother looked at the photo, her eyes widening as though she recognized someone, but fear was written all over her face. This is the man I met, but I don't want any connection with him," she replied, her voice shaking. The prosecutor pressed on with his questioning. "Can you explain more about this man? Why did you meet with him before Toan disappeared?" Toan's mother closed her eyes, trying to hold back the emotions rising inside her. She knew she could no longer hide the truth. "He's someone I've known for a long time. I didn't want Toan to be involved with him because of the kind of work he does. I met with him just to warn him, but I never imagined things would turn out like this." She lowered her head, her voice breaking. "I didn't think the truth would be this bad." The prosecutor listened closely, taking notes on everything she said. "So can you confirm that this man might be part of the story behind Toan's disappearance?" Toan's mother bowed her head, unable to look the prosecutor in the eye. I don't know for sure," she sighed. "But I feel like something's not right. I tried to stop everything, but I couldn't." The prosecutor nodded, his gaze sharp. "We will do everything we can to uncover the truth, but you need to cooperate fully so we can help you and Toan." Toan's mother looked at the prosecutor, her gaze empty, a part of her feeling like she had lost everything. "I will cooperate," she said softly, her voice filled with despair. "I just want my son to come back." The lights in the courtroom still cast a cold, harsh glow, highlighting the silhouettes of the people sitting. Toan's mother remained seated, her hands tightly clenched together, her head bowed low, her eyes empty. The questions from the prosecutor echoed in her mind like daggers piercing her heart. The overwhelming feeling of guilt surrounded her like a shadow that couldn't be shaken off. But she knew there was no time left for regret. She had to face the truth, no matter how painful it was. When the prosecutor stopped questioning, the silence in the room was so thick that the sound of each breath could be heard. Toan's mother could feel the weight of the space around her. It seemed as if the entire room was closing in on her. But at that moment, her lawyer, the only one still standing by her side, turned to face the prosecutor with a completely different attitude. Her defense lawyer, a middle-aged man in a black suit with graying hair, stood up from his seat and walked toward the front of the courtroom. He didn't rush. Walking slowly, his gaze sharp, his calm demeanor unmistakable. He turned to look at Toan's mother for a moment, giving her a gentle nod, as if to encourage her. Then he turned to the prosecutor, his expression shifting to one of full confidence. "Your Honor, may I present a defense on behalf of my client, Mrs. Ngok? Toan's mother is not a criminal. She is a mother filled with love and fear, as she watched her son being dragged into dangers she couldn't prevent. I ask the court to consider her actions in that context. Actions driven by love and the fear of losing her child, not by any intentional deceit." The prosecutor said nothing, but his gaze never left the defense lawyer. Everyone in the courtroom was listening carefully to each word the lawyer spoke, and though Toan's mother sat in silence, she could feel the support from her legal representative. The lawyer continued, not giving the prosecutor a chance to respond. Mrs. Ngok couldn't have acted any differently in that situation. As a mother, she couldn't face the brutal truth that her son could be hurt by relationships she couldn't control. Her actions were not to conceal a crime, but the helpless worry of a mother facing the risk of losing her only child. He paused for a moment, looking up at the judge. We do not deny that she made a mistake by not cooperating with the police from the start, but her silence came from fear. Fear clouded her judgment. She only wanted to protect Toan, to keep those secrets from pulling him into a world she knew was dangerous. And now she recognizes her mistake. Your Honor, this is a crucial factor that must be considered in determining her verdict. Toan's mother lifted her head, her eyes filled with tears full of gratitude. Seeing her lawyer's support, she felt a slight relief from the weight she had carried. While she couldn't change the past, at least, now she was not alone. The prosecutor, though still maintaining his tough demeanor, couldn't ignore the strength in the lawyer's defense. He smirked before turning to the judge, requesting to continue. Your Honor, we cannot let reasons like love and fear justify hiding important information. Mrs. Ngok's lack of cooperation not only made finding the truth harder, but it also cost Toan many chances for rescue. Toan's mother cannot use her fear as an excuse to escape responsibility. The judge nodded, remaining silent as he glanced back at the file in front of him, seemingly weighing all the circumstances. The moments of silence stretched on until finally the judge spoke, his voice low and cold. Thank you, counselor. Mrs. Ngok, do you have anything else to add? Toan's mother sat still for a long time. She looked up, her eyes filled with deep sadness. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft as a whisper, but carrying all the emotions she had bottled up inside. I'm sorry, Your Honor. I only wanted to protect Toan. I didn't know I was wrong for not speaking the truth. If I could go back, I wouldn't have done it. But now I just want you to help me find my son. I was wrong. I admit my mistake. The prosecutor, while still keeping his stern demeanor, couldn't help but feel the sincerity in her words. The judge nodded, his gaze unchanged, but a hint of empathy crept into his thoughts. The defense lawyer, though silent, looked at Toan's mother with eyes full of encouragement. He knew that even though he couldn't fix everything, at least she had recognized her mistake and was cooperating fully. This was the most important factor he could use in her defense. The trial continued, and after the lawyer's defense, Toan's mother's testimony began to make things clearer. The court proceedings carried on, and the final decision was still yet to be made. Everyone in the courtroom knew that the fight wasn't over, and that the truth would eventually come to light, whether Toan's mother wanted it to or not. Although the interrogation had lasted nearly an hour for Toan's mother, it felt like it had just begun. Her testimony, despite her best efforts to protect herself, was still not enough. Each question from the prosecutor and the defense lawyer's counterarguments slowly began to uncover the things she had kept hidden for so many years. Now she felt the tension rising in her veins, as if every word she spoke could change everything. The prosecutor stared at her, his gaze cold and devoid of sympathy. He knew that every answer she gave was a crucial piece of the puzzle, and although she had started cooperating, the full truth was still not revealed. He stood up and walked toward her, and the atmosphere in the room grew heavier than ever. "Mrs. Ngok." The prosecutor began, his voice icy. "You've admitted that you didn't cooperate with the police during the investigation into Toan's disappearance. You also admitted that you concealed important meetings. But do you realize that your silence not only caused Toan to go missing, but also led to other serious consequences?" Toan's mother lifted her head, her eyes red, staring at the prosecutor. Tears flowed uncontrollably, but she no longer wanted to hide them. She realized there was nothing left to protect. Although she had spent years shielding Toan by keeping everything a secret, she could no longer live with this lie. Every effort she had made only led to a darker outcome. "I know I was wrong. I was wrong for not helping you find Toan from the beginning," she said, her voice choked. "I just wanted to protect my son, but I was wrong. My silence couldn't save Toan. It only made everything worse." The prosecutor frowned, but didn't respond. He only waited for her to continue. Her silence had become an accusation, greater than any words. Mrs. Ngok sighed, as if these words had been buried in her heart for too long. "After Toan met that man, I began to feel something was wrong. I told Toan that I didn't want him to keep seeing that person, but he didn't listen. He said he was just a friend, but I didn't believe him. I felt something dangerous, and I started to hide everything." She paused, her eyes looking down at the table, her hands clenched tightly. "I couldn't face the truth. I couldn't imagine that my son could be dragged into such a dangerous world. I just wanted to protect him from that." The judge, after hearing her testimony, turned to the prosecutor as if seeking agreement before continuing the questioning. The prosecutor nodded slightly and proceeded. "Did you ever think that your concealment might have put Toan in a situation that couldn't be saved? You knew too much about Toan's dangerous relationships, yet you stayed silent. That meant you chose to keep Toan in the dark, not letting him see the danger he was facing." Toan's mother couldn't answer immediately. Every word the prosecutor spoke felt like a dagger to her heart. She lifted her head, her eyes full of guilt. "I know I was wrong," she whispered, "but I couldn't stop. When Toan left, I thought that if I stayed silent, everything would go away. I just wanted to protect him, but now I realize that I killed the chance to save my son." The courtroom fell into a heavy silence. Everyone listened intently to her words, as if trying to piece together every part of this tragic story. Toan's mother, after everything had finally come to terms with the truth. The pieces she had kept hidden for so long were now laid bare before the court. The prosecutor continued his questioning. "Can you tell us more about the man you mentioned? Do you know what he did with Toan?" Toan's mother quietly looked at the prosecutor. She didn't want to continue the story, but she knew she couldn't turn back now. Every question would uncover secrets she had tried to bury. "He's someone I've known for a long time." She began, her voice soft but firm. "I didn't want Toan to be involved with him because I knew about his complicated relationships. He's someone who does business with people who aren't good. I felt like Toan would get pulled into things he couldn't control." She paused, her hands loosening, her eyes clouded with the memories. "I tried to warn Toan, but he didn't listen. He kept saying the man only wanted to help, but I didn't believe him. And then when everything started going wrong, I did nothing to stop it. I stayed silent. The judge nodded his gaze toward Toan's mother's stern. "Mrs. Ngok, you've been close to the truth all this time, but you chose to hide it. However, you've also realized your mistake, and that's important. You need to cooperate fully to help the court resolve this matter." Toan's mother couldn't hold back anymore. Tears streamed down her face. "I'm sorry," she cried. "I'm sorry for not speaking up from the beginning. I've made everything worse. I just wanted to protect my son." The chief of police stood nearby, taking notes on Toan's mother's testimony. He knew that her words had opened a new direction in the investigation, but it was impossible to ignore the fact that she had contributed to this tragic situation. As the prosecutor finished his questioning, the judge turned to Mrs. Ngok. "Mrs. Ngok, you've admitted that you were wrong. Your testimony has helped clarify many important details of this case. However, you need to understand that every decision you made has consequences. The court will consider all of these factors in the final judgment." Toan's mother lowered her head, her voice barely audible as she spoke one final time. "I just hope the court will give me a chance to make up for my mistakes and find my son. If there's anything I can do to fix this, I will." The trial continued, but Toan's mother's admissions had brought an end to a chapter in this story. Everything was now clearer, but the questions about Toan and his fate still had no answers. The courtroom was silent, the atmosphere so heavy it felt like it could be cut with a knife. All eyes were on Toan's mother. Everything had led to this moment, the moment when the mother of CEO Toan had to face the court's decision, where all her mistakes, whether driven by love or fear, would have consequences. Toan's mother sat silently in the defendant's chair, her hands tightly clasped together. Her hair had turned gray, but her eyes still carried deep thoughts and worries that couldn't be hidden. After everything she had admitted to hiding the truth and the mistakes she had made. But now she felt like everything had spiraled out of control. The prosecutor sat across from her, his gaze unwavering, his expression stern, offering no sympathy. Her lawyer, though he had tried to defend her, couldn't change the nature of what had happened. Everything had been exposed, whether she wanted it or not. The judge looked down at the file, once again reviewing Toan's mother's testimony. This verdict would not only affect her, but also serve as a warning to anyone who had hidden the truth. Toan's mother sighed, her gaze fixed on the judge, the feeling of anxiety wrapping around her heart like a heavy cloth. Every passing second seemed to stretch on forever. The guilt swelled inside her as she recalled all the wrong decisions she had made, yet she knew she could not change the past. All she could do now was face the consequences. Finally, the judge stood, his face unreadable. All eyes turned to him. Toan's mother lowered her head, her shoulders hunched as if preparing for the worst. The tears she had been unable to stop for so long now freely fell, but she couldn't hold them back anymore. The judge paused for a moment, as if to weigh everything that had happened, then spoke in a serious tone, his voice echoing in the courtroom. "Mrs. Ngok, mother of CEO Toan, you have admitted your mistakes. You concealed important information regarding your son's disappearance, and your actions delayed the investigation, making the case more complicated." Toan's mother didn't dare lift her head. Her eyes were red and blurred from the tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice faint. "I was wrong. I couldn't save Toan, but I'll take full responsibility for my actions." The judge nodded, his serious expression unchanged. You have acknowledged your mistake. You failed to cooperate with the authorities from the beginning, but you have opened up since realizing your errors. Your acknowledgement and cooperation with the police may be seen as a mitigating factor in this case. Toan's mother bit her lip, trying to hold back her emotions. The judge's words brought a relief she hadn't felt before, but she knew this was only part of the verdict. She could not escape her responsibility. But, the judge continued, Mrs. Ngok, your silence and concealment made the case more complicated, and the consequences are irreversible. Toan is still missing, and no one knows what happened to him. The atmosphere in the courtroom grew even heavier. Toan's mother didn't dare raise her head, her hands trembling. These words were like daggers piercing her heart, each sentence sinking her deeper into the pit of guilt. Mitigating factors such as your cooperation with the police and your admission of guilt will be considered. However, you must also take responsibility for your actions. The judge continued. The court could not overlook everything she had concealed. Her failure to inform the police about important meetings had made the case more tangled. But what mattered was that she had acknowledged her mistake and was now trying to make amends. Toan's mother took a deep breath. Her eyes pained, but there was a sense of peace in knowing she no longer had to live in secrecy. However, she understood that this verdict was unavoidable. The judge looked at Toan's mother one last time. The court has decided that you will be convicted for concealing the truth and obstructing the investigation. However, due to mitigating factors such as your cooperation throughout the investigation and your sincere apology, the court will consider reducing the penalty. You will not face the harshest sentence, but you will still be held accountable for your wrongdoings.
Cô không thể bỏ cuộc, cô biết con đường phía trước vẫn còn dài và khu rừng sâu có thể khiến cô lạc đường. Nhưng cô không cho phép mình thất bại. Mỗi bước chân là một lời hứa với chính mình, một lời hứa rằng cô sẽ tìm được lối thoát, rằng cô sẽ không bao giờ từ bỏ